Greetings, fellow cruisers. This is Jeff from Enjoy Life Traveling. Today we are going to take on a tough subject, and that is going to be safety in the Caribbean. I've got several sailings, but I got one coming up that's going to Belize, and Belize is one of those countries that is, that level 4. And I realized I was a little bit nervous about that. What do I do? What do I do to stay safe? Because I'm going to be traveling alone on that one versus, being with my wife. And it's a lot of times where we hear the stories come from when there's an issue. So today we're going to be talking about ways to stay safe when you're traveling to the Caribbean. At the end there, I'm going to take on kind of a little bit of a tougher subject. So just know that that's coming. But I'm going to start with some easier stuff here. One thing you may or may not know is that you can't just wear whatever you want in some of the ports that are in the Caribbean, like Jamaica, for example. There's actually several places, several countries that you cannot wear camouflage, camo. And it can be a hat, it could be a bikini top, but it's not allowed. And it can get you in trouble, depending on the person who catches you and their mood. It could be something where you're sent back to the ship, but it could actually be something that lands you in jail. It's obviously rare. I'm giving you the extremes there, but that's the way it goes. And that brings me to another thing that I wanted to get to is that, and it's very much out there, is that there are fake police, people that intentionally dress like the police. You're in another country, and they have an opportunity to take advantage of you. And there are plenty of stories out there to where that's happening. So if you're doing something like that, you're kind of setting yourself up. And that was one of the other things I wanted to talk about is that, sometimes some people make mistakes, make poor choices, and you maybe not you, but there are people that want to maybe make a shady deal. And you're going to be, or some people are going to be propositioned, and they're going to be propositioned for an escort kind of a service. You're going to be propositioned for drugs, and all you got to do is, they'll be real bold. They're going to come up to you and say, hey, are you looking for this? No, are you looking for that? And they're going to keep going. And if they see a glimmer to where you're considering it, they're going to keep going. And there are a lot of stories out there to where people are making the poor choice of, obviously the deal isn't going to be done in public. And so you come back this way here, and there's a little alleyway or little places to the side. And, the deal's going to go down, and that can get you into a number of different things, but including, and one of the big ones that comes up is this fake police thing, because they can use that. And if you want to make it to your ship on time, if you're sailing or just want to avoid jail, they start threatening you with that, and they look real enough, you could really find yourself, shelling out, everything that's in your wallet and any personal items to not go to jail. And even if you suspect that they're fake police, if they got a gun on them that's real enough, does it really matter? So I want you to keep that in mind. If you know somebody, if it's not you that does this, but if you know somebody who may make a choice to, because maybe you're in another country and they might be legal in their country to have marijuana, but then if you're doing a deal in the side alley to get it, you get yourself into a bind. So it seems like an obvious one to avoid, but the subject's been coming up for years, particularly in, trying to take these taxi rides. It'll take you where you're going. You can get yourself into a real mess. So keep that in mind. One, don't do shady deals. And then two, if you got to go to a back alley, even if it's just to catch a cab that's just for legit reasons, everything should be on the up and up. And you really want to trust your instincts on this, because sometimes you can just feel the problems, and your instincts could be what saves you. So the other thing I want to tell you is to stay safe is that you really want to stay on the main path. I remember my very first time going to Mexico. We walked across the Rio Grande into Nuevo Progreso, Mexico. And, it's a busy area. We're in a new country. It was our first time in a new country. And, everything looks great. And we're talking with some people that do this more regularly. And they said, yeah, then this, stay on the main path and don't go too far. and it goes to the side, and it looks like there's plenty of businesses. And they said, you might be able to go a street or so over one way or the other, but really beyond that, even though it looks like commerce and things to buy and purchase, that they highly recommended that we did not do that. So kind of knowing where you're at and trusting the people that have been there before can really save you, again, from putting yourself into a bad position. Because if you don't know, then you go venturing off because things look right and they're not, you're already in a bind. And unfortunately, there's some bad things that can happen. So, one thing you can do, and there's plenty of solo cruisers out there, so I'm not trying to say don't travel alone as a whole, but when you're doing an excursion or something like that, you might want to find someone to travel with. And if you're on a cruise, that may not be as hard as you think. There are, for pretty much every cruise that I've seen, no matter what the branding is that there is a Facebook site that is for the cruise and the people that are on that cruise. Now, with that said, just like anything else, not everything is always on the up and up. Sometimes they're ran by third parties that are trying to make money, by travel agents. Sometimes it's maybe someone affiliated with a cruise line, or sometimes it's just somebody that created it because they were the first ones. But you can use that, and usually there's an opportunity to create events. And I like to do this. And you create an event that is for your solo travelers, and you get a chance to get to know them right off the bat and find out who's who. So you create something for that first night, and you get to know them. And I say first night, it could be first day. And the cruise will have something that they put out there usually on the itinerary, but it's self-led. And like all those self-led ones, it a lot of times just kind of falls flat because you're trying to find somebody that matches, and there's no plan to find who that person is versus someone that's in the location that they've chosen. Well, if you make that effort to set this up yourself, then you know the parameters, and you can either have a sign set up or something simple for them to find you. Or what I like to do is to say, get some Mardi Gras beads. I mean, they're super cheap. Wear them around your neck. And then on that first day when you're getting on the cruise there, and you have a meet at, the Sky Bar, and they've got the Mardi Gras beads on, you kind of have an idea of who's who. And that's been used, well before me. Sometimes it's just a part of the sailway party and who's been talking on there. But those little things can be something that will give you someone you can get to know. And if you're going into port and you got a day or two, it gives you a chance to make some plans. And maybe the person that you've been talking on the internet, you get to know them, and if they seem creepy or they don't seem creepy, you have a little bit of a chance to vet them, so to speak, to make sure that you're with someone that you're comfortable with. But by setting that up, you got, again, that partner or partners to travel with. And again, I say partners, this is just people that met each other. There's not anything, there's no relationship expectations. It's just, hey, we're friends, and we have going to the same place, same beach, same shopping, same whatever. And so you travel in a group of 2, 3, or 4 to get around. And that way, again, you got that safety in numbers. That's been obviously the golden rule for a long time. This is going to probably sound like one of the more obvious ones, but you don't want to wear a lot of obviously flashy jewelry that's going to put you in a bind. And also with that, you want to watch the bills that you have on you. If you're flashing big dollars and people can see that, you put yourself as a target for someone who's trying to get you, whether that be something as simple as a pickpocket or if that's someone who's trying to scam you. And I've seen this one go on a bit. I've seen even with something like jewelry, if you're not with a reputable jewelry place and you go with someone and you're not familiar with what you're doing, but it looks really good. I remember seeing a couple of years ago to where someone had posted and they were excited because they got this incredible deal on a diamond because they were in another country, they thought, and they negotiated, and they felt good because they negotiated him down to a certain level that seemed amazing. And they took it to one of the jewelry stores right there on the cruise ship, and they looked at it and they said, I'm sorry, that's fake. And so they were putting it on Facebook trying to find out, well, what do you do now? What's the recourse? And the recourse was, before you bought it, was you don't. If you're not buying it from someone that you trust, that that has a reputation, and that's going to give you the real thing, that's not not the person you deal with. I mean, unless you just really know your stuff, you can't look at it and just because they look legitimate, sometimes the more legitimate someone looks, the shadier they are. So it's kind of the sad truth there. But if you're looking to buy jewelry, you're going to want to buy it from a jewelry place that has a reputation that you see in all the ports, and that there's someone that you can reach out to directly. And if there's a reputation on the line, because that's important, because jewelry is a big deal when you're sailing. Another subject that comes up a lot is passport, or what identification you should have. Should you have your passport with you? Should you have your birth certificate with you? And the answer is no. You don't want those with you. You want to keep those in the safe on the ship. You may want to take a picture of it to have that with you. But really what you want to have on you is you want to have a state ID, whether it be a driver's license or a state identification, that it doesn't allow driving, or if you're underage, it may be your school ID, something with a picture on it. And a lot of times, if you leave the port, I didn't see this as much a couple years ago, but I'm finding that to get back in port, that there's a lot of places now that are stopping you and saying, hey, I need to see a form of identification to get you in there. So there's no shenanigans, and they know who they're dealing with. And, there may be ways around that to where if you don't have it with you, that you can get somebody to go to the ship, or they can send someone to the ship, and they take the time to find someone that works on the ship, and they, the port authority, and they get into your room, and they're able to get into the safe, and then they bring you your passport. And that's a whole lot of headache for something that didn't need to happen. And you should always have an ID with you. But I wouldn't keep your passport, because if that's stolen, you've really got a mess on your hands. And that's just a bad idea. So another one that it can seem very funny, it's kind of a running joke, and that is to be a pier runner. And you might think, well, how does that make you in an unsafe situation? And the thing is that people missed the boat. I'm sorry, I said that so wrong. They missed the ship. It is not a boat. They missed the ship. And so what you end up happening to do there is now on your own dime, assuming that it wasn't an excursion that was through the ship, you got to figure your way home. And that starts with going to the U.S. Embassy. I mean, is that what you want to do on your vacation, is go try to find the embassy? And how many people are you going to have to ask and hope that you're getting to the right person that's going to get you there safely? And if you've got someone that sees you're in distress and they're shady, you're prey. They're the predator, you're prey. So by putting yourself into a situation to where you're that pier runner and you don't make it, you're setting yourself up for at least potentially to be a victim. So you don't want to do that. And really, it should be just common sense that you want to make sure you're to the ship on time, show some respect to the ship, and always plan to be, what I like to do is a minimum of an hour and a half. And I say that because it gives you some time, but also if for some reason your clock, you set it wrong and you're off that hour, you've at least got a half an hour buffer. And quite honestly, a lot of times I shoot for 2 hours just for that. And I know that you spend all this money on the vacation, you want every chance you get, every moment, to be enjoying your excursion in this other country, and that's what's fun. You want the max, but it's not worth the headache. You really want to make sure that you're on that ship appropriately and accounted for, so nothing happens. That's what's being safe. So another big subject that can get you into a bind is travel insurance, and that's not an area you want to skimp at. I'm just going to start right there. You want travel insurance because the insurance that you have through your work or anything that's been purchased in the United States in this case, that does not transfer to the ship. And even if something happens on the ship and you're thinking, well, yeah, they're gonna fly me back to the U.S. I just won't have them do any procedures until I get to the U.S. That's great, but that helicopter ride when they have to medevac you off, there's about $10,000, and they want that up front, by the way. Or if you started out going into a hospital in Mexico or wherever, they want their money before you leave, and they're not going to just let you go. And you're not in our country where you have the same freedoms. You got to come up with that money. So you want to have the right travel insurance, and you want to have some copies of it with you, so you can be taken care of if something happens, because things do happen, and it's I think people take it for granted, and maybe they even only think medical. but there's other things that can happen. Even if you want to be safe on here in the United States, there's right now, as I'm making this video, there's a hurricane, bearing down, and people are worried about their cruise being canceled, and they didn't get insurance. And now what do? Well, you should have got insurance. That was a reason for it. I saw a sad story that I think it was the son that was putting out about his, mother and father going on a cruise, and I believe it was the father that passed away. And he was upset, and he was putting Royal Caribbean, I think it was, maybe it was Carnival, but he was putting them on blast because they wouldn't refund the money that they were for the cruise because there was someone that passed away. And that's unfortunately, yes, that they're correct. The cruise line's correct because that's the reason you have insurance. That's what that is for. And just because someone felt like saving that money and something came up, and it's that, not to be insensitive, but that that bleeding heart story, that thing that really pulls at your heartstrings, that doesn't mean you get a free pass on what should have been done to begin with, which is to get that insurance. And at least in my opinion, if you don't have the insurance for everybody in your party, honestly, I wouldn't recommend you take the cruise. I would wait until you had that money set to the side. And really, a lot of times those plans aren't as bad as you think. We like to use Allianz, and with that, we have the yearly plan. So it covers our travel, not just for one cruise, but stuff that we would do within the United States that would count as traveling, that things that could come up with canceled flights for weather and such like that. And there's different plans that you have to make sure you have what covers what, but that's out there, so you have the right things. All right, let's get to the tough one. First of all, this is rare, but it happens. There are plenty of stories about it, and it happens right here in the United States, and that is human trafficking. It's a tough subject. Well, a lot of times, what are they doing when they're, human trafficking? A lot of times they're taking them to, across the border to Mexico or wherever. And that's where you're already at. So if something happens, they don't have to take you so far. And again, I say Mexico, it could be anywhere. I read something to where someone was in St. Martin going back 10 years, but I just read it, to where a van had pulled up middle of the day on a Monday and jumped out and tried to grab a lady and their mother and pull them into a van. And they fought them off in this particular instance. But again, this is the middle of the day, and they were not in an area that was unsafe. There was a population. There were people around that could see and hear, and yet it still happened. And so what I want to get at with this is that, first of all, don't let that stop you from a vacation, because again, that can happen right here in the United States. Something happens like that. This is on the rare side, but you want to be smart. You have to be smart, and you want to make sure you're aware of your surroundings, what's going on, and you're reacting to it. I'm fortunate in that I've got a lot of anxiety. You may have seen some other videos when I first started out talking about the anxiety that I have, and scenarios just run through my head all the time about the things that can happen. And sometimes that's a nightmare world to live in my head, but it has me running through scenarios a lot of times that other people wouldn't even think about, of stuff that could happen. So not always, but it is something I'm certainly aware of. And I want to encourage you to, when you're out somewhere, is to just take a moment and say, okay, well, what could happen here? What am I going to do? If something happens along those lines. I mean, it sounds odd to prepare for, a potential abduction kind of a situation, but particularly if you're someone who doesn't have a lot of experience, you're younger, or if you're a parent, certainly, and you're with a kid, a young lady that you're trying to protect that could be a target. Have a plan. Be thinking about those possibilities. And I feel bad even putting this out there, because when you're on vacation, the last thing you want to think about is that. But it's going to be the thing that you're going to wish you'd thought about if something happens. And again, these are the extreme situations. It's not something that happens often. This is incredibly rare that you're going to hear something along those lines, as far as from a cruise ship and being out. That's not something you necessarily hear about. And a lot of times you're actually with the cruise lines and such like that. So, and I guess that would be the place I want to leave you is that, sometimes if you're particularly, if you're in an area like, Belize or Jamaica that tend to run at a level 4 from the United States as far as their threats, you you want to be extra cautious. You want to be careful because, if something happens, that's a nightmare situation. So, again, I don't want to spoil your vacation. You need to have fun. You want to have fun. You shouldn't have to worry about any of this. But a little bit of mindfulness is really all I'm telling you to do here, is to be thinking about it, because that would be the absolute worst case scenarios for any of those types of things to happen. So one of the things I definitely want this channel to do is to give you those tips and tricks to make your life easier on whatever scale that we're talking about. And so if you just watch this video right here, this is a whole playlist of tips and tricks that you can look out for on a cruise to make your life a little easier. Thanks for watching.